So today on the Accounting for the Community podcast, we have Michael Phillips, President of Innovation Circles.
Pleasure. Nice to be here. Thank you very much for having me in.
Thanks, Michael. And I should say you're also my dad, so just so that we, avoid that elephant in the room. So just a little bit about Michael. President of Innovation Circle, a consulting firm that helps business design and implement sustainable process frameworks to enhance their new product and service development. With over 20 years of innovation benchmarking experience, Michael's focus revolves around addressing two critical issues for businesses: effectively tackling complex multi-stakeholder strategic challenges and implementing sustainable innovation processes. Michael is a champion of utilizing methodologies such as stage gate and game theory, as he believes that they greatly enhance strategic problem solving and innovation initiatives. His work has spanned various industries, including automotive, building materials, aggregates, chemicals, CPG, defense contractors, financial services, information technology, manufacturing, and more. In the early 2000s, Michael led the consulting training delivery group for Franklin Covey in Canada, focusing on leadership development and effectiveness. He holds certifications in several Franklin Covey programs, such as the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the 4 Roles of Leadership, What Matters Most, and the 4 Disciplines of Execution and Business Think. Additionally, Michael has facilitated executive immersions across the world, including in Silicon Valley, London, Cape Town, South Africa, and India. So thank you, Dad, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me in. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So today the topic is innovation process benchmarking for small to medium-sized enterprises. So maybe before we get into this, what is innovation process benchmarking, and why is it important for SMEs?
Sure. It's a great question. When you benchmark, you're basically doing a performance analysis of your organization, and you're comparing it against what is considered best or good practices, either researched as a result through a consortium, a group that has looked at other industries and has put together best, worst, average performances, and you compare yourself against that. Now, innovation process benchmarking, you're focused on the innovation framework of an organization. And what's really interesting about that, although we're focused today on small and medium-sized enterprises, whether you're small, whether you're a medium-sized or a large, you have the same drivers, which is to say that these organizations have 2 key pursuits. There is, in their organization, there is what I would call present Inc., and then there's also future Inc. All right? Now, present Inc. is the work that you're doing day to day to pay your bills, to establish your sales, to make your revenues, to support and service your customers. Future Inc. is the work that you're doing today to ensure 2, 3, 4 years down the road, you have a supply of new products and services to meet the needs, the changing needs of your clients and of potential new clients, right? So when we're doing innovation process benchmarking, we really are looking at the future Inc. of an organization, ensuring that the organization is in a position where it can actually launch great new products or services.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
Excellent. So what are some of the key performance indicators or KPIs that SMEs can use to benchmark their innovation process?
Sure. Generally speaking, the individuals who have been doing research around innovation best performance, right, for the last 30 or 40 years, frankly, have established that there are 8 key areas, all right? When they look at organizations that seem to be doing well at innovation and have sustained their success, these 8 areas, all right, tend to be where they have focused and have achieved a level of competency that separates themselves from other organizations. So these 8 would be innovation strategy. So does the organization have an innovation strategy? Portfolio management, the innovation process itself. So how do you take an idea to launch, right? What process are you using? The climate and culture of an organization. So does the organization have in place the culture necessary to ensure that people doing the work of innovation, product development, service development actually can do that work well? All right. Then the other 4 would be resources, because oftentimes organizations with the best intent set out to do product development and service development, but they don't resource it properly. Time, people, money. right? So we look at that. We look at now what we're seeing now is innovation ecosystems. Typically speaking, if you're doing new to you or new to world type innovation, it's not just yourself. You're going to have what I call the C-suite of innovators involved. These are collaborators, co-innovators, complementers. Let me speak to that. If you have an iPhone right now and you hold that up and I said to you, if you didn't have apps on that phone, how valuable would that phone be to you? And you'd probably say, well, it would just be a phone. And that would be correct. But most of these apps that are on your phone are coming from third parties. They're not being developed by the phone manufacturers. So we call those complementers. Those are individuals, organizations that are actually leveraging the platform to also provide innovations and solutions, right? We have ideation. So when we think about innovation itself, there's basically, starts like this: ideate, all right, and then select. So how do we ideate to come up with ideas? Then how do we select the ideas we want to work on? That's really fundamentally key. Then the next piece is how do we evaluate and validate, all right? So once we've decided on what we want to work on, how do we ensure that that is going to be ultimately the product or service we want to launch? How do we know it's going to win? And then the last piece is launch, right? So we ideate, we select, we evaluate, we validate, and then we launch. All right, so that's all part of that innovation piece. The next piece to that would be, well, I mentioned portfolio management, I mentioned innovation strategy, resources, innovation ecosystems, climate culture, ideation, teams. Teams are absolutely vital because at the end of the day, it's people that innovate, nothing else, right? And if you don't have the right teams in place, it could be problematic for you. I think that's 8. If I've got that 8, yeah.
I didn't count, but I trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about people. So what are you saying, that artificial intelligence doesn't count as people?
That's interesting. I mean, this is where things seem to be moving towards. But I don't think yet artificial intelligence is going to be able to actually replace people when it comes to innovation. Certainly artificial intelligence will be a tool that I would think people doing product development, right, will want to be able to access to what we call decrease the amount of time required to evaluate and validate, right? There are 3 key areas in innovation. So when we look at an innovation framework, and we've talked about those 8 areas, right? When we look at those 8 areas, we're thinking in terms of market feasibility, all right? Technical feasibility, and ecosystem feasibility. So when we want to prove up a new idea, a product or a service, we need to make sure that from a technical standpoint it's going to work. It's something that we can do, right? We want to make sure from a market standpoint that there's a market for it, right? That it's a large enough market and that people will actually want to buy it, all right? And that it's solving a need. And then lastly, with ecosystem feasibility, there are other players, like I mentioned, complementers, co-innovators, collaborators, colleagues, councils. I call it the C-suite of innovation to make it easy for people to remember. But essentially what you're thinking about is all the stakeholders, both internal and external, all right, that could impact the success. And just because we all might get a paycheck signed by the same person in that company, that doesn't necessarily mean we're all on the same team. For example, your innovation group is developing and designing, planning to launch a new product. Sounds like a great product. Your sales department is measured and is compensated on, say, revenue, right? They're going to be pursuing things that they can sell to drive their revenue in order to make their commissions, make establish their sales targets to keep their job. And if you ask them to go out and now selling this other product that is not properly supported or is going to a market that they're not familiar with, it may not be in their best interest to support it at that time. You see what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. Okay? Yeah. So all of these things need to be understood. If you're doing product development and you're going to rely on your sales department to sell that, all right, you want to make sure that you've got it juxtaposed in such a way that it is in their best interest to support you. Because when your back is turned, they will be doing something else. Right. Hopefully that helps.
Right. Well, now let's talk about from a smaller scale. If you have a smaller business that might not have as many people,
sure.
What if you don't necessarily have the in-house expertise to kind of guide that process?
Very important, and that's why process is so important so that you understand what inputs that you need in order to evaluate and validate the idea. And where you find yourself missing the technical competency to be able to do a task, and I'm not talking about engineering or scientific research, I'm talking about market research, for example. I'm talking about the ability to be able to understand what it will take to win in the marketplace. Now, in some organizations, what you'll find is that everybody in R&D or everybody in market may be actually driving innovation. So today I walk in as the head of marketing, but I'm going to put on my technical hat because on that team, that's what they're asking me to do. Wrong. I don't have the skills for that. You need to be cross-functional. But if you don't have the skills in-house, then you need to go outside to say, what skills do we need then and why, right? That's why processes are so important, because it provides a guidance to you. It allows you to be able to see what it's going to take to be able to evaluate, validate, and another one that I introduced now, nurture. So if this was the product we were working on, right, and we've gone out into the marketplace and we're starting to establish that this would be something that could be of interest to people to consume, all right, wonderful. But now we would ask ourselves, can we make this idea even better? How do we nurture this? So we want to evaluate, validate, and potentially nurture. If all of a sudden we find that this is not working out, we need to kill. We need to say, okay, it looks like it's not going to actually hang together. We need to now put it away and say, next, right? And small organizations will typically have that challenge of maybe not have everybody in-house. And what I have found in my working with small organizations, they will generally have a Marcom group, but they may not actually have a marketing group, right? They're good at being able to advertise, to be able to position, to be able to build awareness around their product or solution, but they may not actually have the skills to do the initial research to understand if they're introducing a new product or service, if there is a market for that, and will it hang together.
Right. Yeah. So essentially what you're saying is you really need to build a team around you, and that could be from external partners who have experience in innovation, or for example, in our industry, we're trusted advisors from the financial standpoint to provide business owners with that snapshot of where their business is today. So they can make those guided decisions, informed decisions based on their financial position. So yeah, that's excellent. Are there, or what would you say are some specific industries or sectors where innovation benchmarking has been particularly beneficial from a small to medium-sized business example?
Generally speaking, if you're an organization that is doing, developing new products and services, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, all right? You should be looking at your actual process. And by that, I mean, once you decide that you're going to have an innovation process, benchmarking then allows you to not only to see what others are doing and how you compare against those, but also for you to level set. This is the next piece, you see. When you actually benchmark yourself, you establish a level. By whatever results are, they come back and they tell you, where are we against others? Where do we want to go? Where are we starting from? What should we be working on? Right? So that is all part of that process. And why benchmarking to me is such a valuable process is not so much because of the results, it's because of the conversations those results can help us have. All right? I've benchmarked a number of different companies, large, medium, not so many small, to be honest with you, because typically the real small ones are focused on one product. But the ones that are starting to get involved in others, right, then it makes sense. And what I find is that it's very interesting, because when I benchmark, I like to look at some key metrics for project, process, and business. So I want to see if the organization is using metrics to be able to evaluate from the project itself, right? Whether or not they're using metrics to investigate the process they're using, right? So that could be time to launch, slip rate, for example, when do they kill? These are all things that can tell you a little bit about your process, right? And then the business one is the aggregation of all your project ones, so you can compare it against your business strategy. So when you're looking at that, what becomes really important is to say, okay, why does the executive team think that one person in the executive team thinks that we launch 1 to 10 new products a year. Another one thinks that we launch 11 to 30. One doesn't know, and the fourth one says we don't track this. See, that's a conversation. I don't care what the real number is. I really don't, right? They should, but I don't really care. What I care about is the fact that you've got 4 people who are basically all thinking it's something different. Now, why that's important? Because those 4 individuals are also making decisions potentially based on what they think is happening, right? Which is why it's so critical then to say, do we actually track this? Okay, great. If we do track it, what is the number, right? And by the way, how does that then reflect against our innovation strategy? Did we say in our innovation strategy we were going to try to launch 1 to 10 things this year, of which maybe 2 would be new to us or new to world? How are we doing against that? You see how those metrics start to sort of allow you to be able to measure yourself. So you have the benchmarks against what other companies are doing, and then you have these metrics that you can actually say, how are we doing against ourselves?
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yes.
It's very, very, it's fascinating stuff.
We can tell that you're passionate about it, which we love.
Yeah.